What do Enron, Lehman Brothers, and GE have in common?
They all give me the shivers when I think about them.
Flying toaster screensaver. No, that's not really the answer. Hey, if you want to know the answer, you can hear it here in 5 Minute Finance with Mike Morton, and I am your host, Matt Robeson. This is the show where we do not bore you. We refuse to bore you with generic financial information. We're just trying to make it easy to understand what to do with your money in little 5-minute snippets that lighten your load and make things easier. Mike, you have a tagline. Life is busy. Your finances don't have to be. We got you. Is that it?
That's it, man. Welcome to the show.
Your new tagline? You're trotting this around. I like it. All right. Hey, people, email Mike. Let him know what you think about the new tagline. And also, I'm sure he would love to get some feedback on the take-home message from today's episode, which is what all those companies at the top actually had in common is that if you were a little too over-leveraged in any of them at any point, it probably didn't go well for you, right? Like you probably faced some consequences. So what is it you're trying to leave people with today?
Yeah, today's message is be careful about over-investing in a single company, having, a single stock be a large part of your portfolio. It feels great when times are good and things are going up. And when the music stops and something happens, it can really be very ruinous to your situation. So you want to be extremely careful if you find that you have a single stock making a large percentage of your portfolio.
Could you just give me the thumbnail? This is the 5-minute part. Well, it's not really the 5-minute part, but this is the 30-second part. Just give me a quick snippet of what are you going to go over here?
All right. Today, we're going to talk about single stock risk. So, like I said, if it's over 10% of your portfolio in a single stock, you got a lot of single stock risk. What's that mean versus, kind of diversified portfolio? How does this happen? How do you end up with, a large part of your portfolio in a single stock? Why it's riskier than you think it's, even as it's risky, but it's even riskier than that. If you're employed by that company, it's a double risk. And then finally, of course, what to do if you find yourself in this situation. We'll come up with a plan. And finally, get rich versus stay wealthy. I think we had a whole episode on this, but I'll touch on that right at the end as well.
I'm fine, by the way, with either of those options. They're both great.
Yeah, get rich.
I can stay rich, or whichever it is, like rich, wealth, it's all good. It's all good. Speaking of which, if all of that sounds enticing to you, including the getting rich part, hang on for our listener question, which is how does NUA work? Which I'm not sure if that's a rap band or is that Dua Lipa? No, that's Dua Lipa. Not sure what that is. You're going to tell me in our listener question, and hang on for our one thing segment at the end where we give you one thing that very simply can make things a little bit better for you.
Matt, how do you don't know the NUA? Come on, net unrealized appreciation. You've been living under a rock?
Oh my gosh. You know what? I remember Ice Cube rapping about that, and it was very compelling. And one thing segment, which is today, diversify your identity. Sounds woke, man. Are you going to get canceled by Doge?
Yeah, that's right. Doge is gone, man. There's no more Doge.
Don't let them hear you that you want to diversify your identity. You're gonna you're gonna get deported. All right, let's get into it. So, you don't want to have too many eggs in one stock basket. Why?
Yeah. It's really what we call concentration risk. And of course, right off the top of your head, but I'll still say it. It's like if you have, 30, 40, 50% of your investment portfolio in a single stock, whether that's Apple or Tesla or NVIDIA, it can be a massive what we call concentration risk. And this is the risk that you just own one thing that's going up or down, no matter what the rest of the market and the economy is doing. And so it really does put all your eggs in one basket. I mean, you're really betting on black or red. You're rolling the dice. And like I said, when things are going well, it's fantastic. Because, you could double your money in just a year. It went from, 300,000 to 600,000. And then it goes to 1.2 million. And suddenly you're a millionaire. You got 1.2 million. It's really ridden up over the last 3 or 4 years. but it can go down just as quickly. And those companies we listed at the start are examples that it never feels that way, Matt. It never feels like it's going to go down. Like Apple. Oh my gosh, Apple could never go down. They make the best products, the best stuff. They're a massive company. And yet, that's what people said about GE. And look where they ended up. So you really have to be very careful when you have what we call concentration risk when you're in just a single company.
Two things. First of all, I thought I learned in that documentary, Passenger 57 from Wesley Snipes, that you always bet on black. That is the rule. Second of all, you suggested at the top of the show that the way to know that you might be facing some concentration risk is if you're holding more than, you said 10%?
Yeah,
Is that right?
I would say the cutoff is like 10%. I mean, often we might even say 5%.
Oh, wow.
I think, anything more than 10%, you really got to take a hard look at and make sure you understand the risk that you're taking. Now, it's not as serious as if it was 50%. But anything above 10%, I would really start taking a look at.
You teased at the top that you were going to cover the question of how does this happen to people? It sounds like there's a suggestion that people don't set out to get over leveraged in one stock, right? Like how does this happen?
Yeah, typically it's when people are just working for that company. And so I've run across this a number of times. Say you're working for Amazon for like 10 years. You're given stock options. You're given your bonuses in RSUs. And then of course you're paid by the company you're employed there. And then sometimes even in the 401k plans, you have incentives for buying the stock of that company. And there's even employee share purchase programs, ESPPs. So there's all these ways that you end up with generating stock in your portfolio. And most people, when you get the RSUs, you get the stock options, you get the ESPP, like they don't sell it. It just kind of, because momentum, right? It just like hits the account. Oh, this is great. I just got 30,000 of stock as my bonus. And then it's going up. It's like, oh, it's always going up. You're working there. You're drinking the Kool-Aid. So that's
what happened to me with this. I was working for a large company, and as part of my compensation package, they gave me some stock, and there was an incentive with it. It vested after 3 years. So I had to hold it until it fully vested, for a little while. But after that, I just felt awkward selling it. Like,
yes.
If I do this, is it like a friend finding out that I re-gifted their birthday present to me? Like, do I seem churlish? Do I seem like I'm stone cold dissing my employer? It was weird. I've never been in this position before. Is that like culturally cool?
Because that's a real thing, right? Like it's a dissonance. Because you're working for a company, so you kind of believe in it, or you got coworkers, you're enjoying it, it's going well, hopefully, and you kind of believe in what you're doing, and yet then you're going to sell the stock. Like,
right?
How does that work?
If I had announced to our listeners right now that I sold all my stock in 5-minute finance, I'd be like, well, then why the hell am I listening to these guys? You don't have the faith in this product, so like what the heck? It feels like not something that I want to do, but I don't know. Anyway, that's so.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Matt. So if you're listening and you're just suddenly dawning on you like, wow, I have been working here for 3 or 4 years. Like, oh, I do have a lot of that stock. What I would do there is really write it down. All right. I would write down, okay, cool. Let me just take stock of where I am.
Right.
How much do I own in my company? And how much do I own in general in my 401k diversified funds or with my family, whatever. And add it up and see if it's more than that 10%. And if it is, that's where you maybe need to start thinking about a plan, because it's only going to grow, Matt. Your company's going to do well for the next couple of years. It's going to go up. You're going to get more of that stock. It's only going to continue. So if you already find yourself at 10 or 20%, it's just going to grow from there.
Well, you had another fascinating one that I'd never thought of. Of course, the list of things that I've never thought of is quite long, which is you're secretly doubling your risk if the source of over leveraging is that you are an employer, your employee, and you're holding your employer's stock. What do you mean you're doubling your risk? Like, why is that?
So you're working at Amazon and you've got all this stock. You got 20% of your portfolio in Amazon stock from the RSU and options. And then suddenly Amazon's not doing so well. Something comes in sideways, takes them out. You got tariff situation, you got competitors from overseas or whatever it is. And now your employment is at risk and your investment portfolio is at risk. So at the same time, so again, this is a single stock, single concentration risk, but now your employment is also tied to that. And so you're really doubling your risk. And I would, again, you find yourself in this great situation. Hey, I've been getting paid well. I'm generating a lot of stock in my company. You really want to look at diversifying that, especially when you're still employed there.
Does this also sneak up on people? Let's say you're diversified, but not like that super diversified, right? You hold a bundle of stocks, but you're not in like a broad index fund with most of your investments. And can this just happen because one of your holdings grows a lot suddenly and you suddenly discover it in one of your annual Mike Morton checkups?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This happens. So I've run across people that have a nice portfolio like that, because remember years ago, that was kind of the way to do it. Like,
right.
Didn't used to be index funds and stuff.
Right.
So I've got people that have 30, 40, 50 individual stocks. And in them, a bunch of them have kept up. They've done fine, but then and then some of them have like done really well, double or tripled, 10, not even double, triple, like 10x or like almost, 20x or something like that. So they vastly outweigh now the rest of the portfolio. And again, you have the same kind of situation, and it's hard to unwind when you get decades later. It becomes harder and harder to unwind from a tax perspective. An interesting stat there, Matt. Out of the whole portfolio of public companies, only 4% outperform T-bills. So the risk-free rate, which is currently like 4 or 5% a year, because we have interest again. Remember a few years ago when we didn't even have interest, you wouldn't get anything on your money. Now you get like 4%. Only a small fraction of companies outperform, and what they do is they vastly outperform. All right.
Right.
And so
all the growth is concentrated in like 1 out of every 25 stocks, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why you want to hold the whole index, to get that. It's hard to pick that 1 out of 25.
Oh, right. You don't know what the winners are. And the other side of that coin is this stat you shared with me that according to JP Morgan, nearly 40% of stocks in the Russell 3000 have experienced a permanent 70% decline from their peak. So there's downside risk. It just sounds to me like either way, what you're saying is an awful lot of stocks are not going to do well, and they might sink permanently. And that's
and even more, that stat and other ones show you that even these companies that do outperform, take a Microsoft or an Apple or an Amazon that's just done really well for the last 20 years, they have moments where they're down by more than 70% from a recent high. I mean, really big drops. And to stick around, and that's why we like to buy and hold, and stick around. But just recognize when you're in a single stock, it's going to get very risky from that standpoint too. Can you hold on to it through those massive drops? If you really believe it's going to come back.
Just to pick up on something that you outlined toward the top of the show, is all of this, right? Like, the fact that so much of the upside is concentrated in a few unknown stocks, so much downside exists out there for all the rest. Is that why all of this is even riskier than you think if you get over concentrated in a stock?
Yeah, exactly. It's what we call idiosyncratic risk versus market risk.
Idiosyncratic risk.
Yeah, so we know that market
risk. That's a $25 word there, Mike. I'm very impressed. Idiosyncratic risk.
Idiosyncratic risk. Market risk we know, right? We know the market's going to go up and down. I mean, you can look at just yearly performance of the total U.S. stock market. It's maybe up 20%, it's down 10%. We know it's going to go up and down. Sometimes we'll go in recession, maybe it drops by 40 or 50% for a couple of years, and then climbs back up. And then you got booming years where it's up, 20 or 30% as well. So we know that's market risk. The problem is idiosyncratic risk means just a single stock or a single industry. It's just idiosyncratic to that company or that sector. All right. So certain sectors could be really hit, like tariffs, really affected certain sectors more than others, right? Depending on where they land and where they end up. And then even a single company can have any sorts of problems, right? You could have one bad apple in a single company kind of ruin that company. right? A CEO or a chief officer,
Yes.
embezzling funds or something, like nothing to do with the product.
Let's call him Milan Usk.
Yeah, exactly. So you can have these, and that's, again, you can do all the analysis you want. Oh, it's a great product. I believe in the market future, whatever. But you just never know what a competitor might pop up. You never know like what, the company management might decide, the board of directors decides, whatever it is. So you're taking a lot of individual risk that is way outside of your control.
All right. Let's say that people are out there saying, got it. You've sold me. I've got to be careful about this. What do you do? This is like a pamphlet at the doctor's office. So you're over concentrated. What do you do?
Yeah. So first you just got to create a plan. You just got to sit down and figure this out. So you decide, oh geez, I do own 10% or 20 or 30%, in a single company. I'm taking on more risk than I realize, and I really need to start diversifying this. All right. So first write down where you are, and then a plan where you want to be. Hey, I want to get under 10%. I'm at 30%. I want to get under 10%. How am I going to do that? And so I've done this with clients. I've had a client recently that worked for a company for a long time. And this is actually the listener question as well, we'll get to in a few minutes. But he worked for a company for a long time and had grown, a lot of wealth in that company. And so we had to come up with a plan of like, hey, we now own a lot of this single stock. It was 25% maybe. And so we got it down under 5% over 3 or 4 years. So you just have a plan to not take too many capital gains. Hopefully there's capital gains in there. It's gone up in value. And so every year we'd sell a certain amount, try to get it down from 25% to 20 to 15 to 12 to 10, whatever it is. That's
kind of like what I'm trying to do in my brokerage account right now.
Wait, what are you doing in your you're trying to move the money every month?
Yeah,
every
try
year?
and get it into, an IRA or something.
The whole, the money laundering. The right kind.
That's a very important caveat.
They're listening.
That's a very, very important. You're going to want that caveat in there, people.
Yeah. You can go back and listen to that one. But it's that plan, right? And the same thing, I think we mentioned earlier, like if you're still working for that company and growing, right? You're getting the RSUs, you're exercising stock options, you're in the ESPP. Like ESPP is an easy one. Set it to sell that as soon as you buy in the ESPP a couple times a year. Go ahead and sell it. RSUs are a bonus paid in stock. All right. It's literally a bonus. You're getting $30,000. They just decided instead of cash, they're going to give it to you in Amazon stock. They're going to give it to you in Apple stock. Here's 30,000 of Apple stock. So my question to my clients whenever we have this is, hey, if I gave you $30,000, would you run out and buy Apple stock? And they're usually like, well, I really believe in Apple, but I already own a lot of it. So no, if I had 30,000, I wouldn't like go and buy more. I'm like, well, that's just what they did. They gave you a $30,000 bonus in the form of stock. If you sell it right away, it's no different than they just giving you cash. All right. So those are the kinds of things that you can start. You can see that, wow, I am getting concentrated. What can I do? The ESPP, I could sell. The RSUs, I could sell. Stock options are definitely trickier when it comes to taxes. So you really have to work out, a good plan. And it's really the tax situations that are going to play into how long the plan takes to execute, how many years, if you can start, sooner, or if you really got to spread it out.
Just give me 30 seconds on the option of donating to a donor advised fund.
Yeah, that's another great one. Two other options. Donor advised funds, when you have a significant growth capital gain in your stock, you can, if you're charitably inclined, you can donate that and get an immediate tax write-off. So if you in a high income bracket, wow, I'm still getting that bonus of the RSUs. I'm still, gainfully employed. It's really great. So you can use those high income years, donate your appreciated stock, and you get a double whammy. I've worked on situations, Matt, where the charitable organization will get $100,000, and yet the person giving up the stock only gives up $40,000 of purchasing power. So in other words, 60 grand was really the difference of taxes. They were going to give up that much in tax. But so the charity gets 100 grand, but you only give up 40 grand. So it's a really great win-win.
Now, I'm personally a raging dick, and I don't like to give away anything to anyone. Will this work for me?
No, you're still giving away the 40 grand.
You had another hint in here. Well, it's good to know. That's news I can use.
No, it is really good to know.
Yeah, it's like, so there's another pamphlet from your doctor's office. So you're a raging dick. So
That's right.
you had also had a hint earlier that you could hedge. Are you talking about hedging against your own company? Is that what you're talking about? Like, well, is that the kind of thing that could get me fired?
Absolutely, it can. So do not go down this route without seriously checking it out.
It's tempting, though. It's like I work at Amazon. I don't know how I'd hedge against Amazon. I don't have a strategy for this, but it's like that would be amazing.
And I got $1 million of Amazon stock, so I'm worried about it's going to go down. So I'll hedge against it. Yeah, short sell it, and not a good idea if you're still employed there for all kinds of reasons. But you can, it's sophisticated strategies. But of course, if you got a couple million, in a single stock and it's gone way up in value, you really can't unwind it very quickly. You could do cover calls or hedge against, the downside. So in case it gets whacked by like 30 or 40% for some unknown reason, that idiosyncratic risk, then you make it up on the other side. But don't wade into that without really knowing what you're doing.
So the listener question, before I get to it, I'll just remind everyone, if you're a client of Mike's, you can just email him. That's in the package. If you want to hear his thoughts on a question in a future show, email the show, pod@mortonfa.com. All right. Someone took the initiative to do that, an unknown, thank you, unknown listener. And you asked, how does NUA work? And I assume that the answer is straight out of Compton.
Yes, straight out of Compton. Net unrealized appreciation. What this is you are able to buy your stock. So you work for Amazon, you can buy Amazon stock. I don't know if this is true or not, but many companies allow this in the 401k. So in your 401k, you got target date funds and maybe a couple others, but also they offer the company stock in there. And so you can build up company stock by, every month you're in your 401k. So now you own, $1 million of Amazon stock because you've worked there for 20 years and it's all in the 401k. When you take that out, remember out of the 401k, when you take it out, it's going to be earned income. So you sell some Amazon stock, you take out 50 grand, it's taxed as 50 grand of ordinary income. Usually the rates, right, are 24%, maybe 35%, pretty high for ordinary income. You'd rather that be capital gains. If it was taxed at capital gains rates, only 15%, way better. Right. Okay. So that's what net unrealized appreciation is. You're allowed to take the company stock out of the 401k and put it into just a taxable brokerage account. At that time, you pay ordinary income on just whatever the cost basis. So probably pretty low. You only paid 50 grand total for that $1 million of Amazon stock. And then as you sell the $1 million, it's all taxed as capital gains. So that's what net unrealized appreciation is. It's fantastic. You can save hundreds of thousands in tax, but it has a lot of caveats. You have to do things very carefully. You got to roll out the entire 401k. You got to keep track of the cost basis, etc. So be very careful with it, but it is an amazing incentive from the IRS.
That is very, very useful. All right. Well, I'm sure I'll just repeat again. If people have future questions, you can email pod@mortonfa.com. Let's just round out today's topic before we get to our one thing segment on this get rich versus stay wealthy. What do you mean?
Yeah, so we may have talked about this on a previous episode, but it always comes up when I think about concentration risk or having just a small handful of stock. That is the way to get rich. The way to get rich is to go all in with your time and energy and money on just a strategy or a small number of strategies, like starting your own company. I'm going to start a company and try to make this thing happen. Or I'm going to, get a real estate business up and running. I'm going to get a small, multi-unit apartment building, put my time and energy and money into that. And the same with single stocks. Hey, I'm researching stocks and spending my time and energy, and I'm going to go all in. I really believe in NVIDIA is going to keep taking over the world. I'm going to go all in. That's how you get rich, because to get rich, you need to 10x your money. That's what getting rich means. It's starting with 100 grand and I'm growing it to $1 million in 5 or 10 years. That's hard.
You got to take a risk.
You got to take a risk, right?
Yeah.
That's hard to do just having a W-2 job. You can save and it's great. And that's the versus stay wealthy. Okay. So the getting rich is I got to try to 10x my money. You got to go all in. You got to be concentrated. You got to swing for the fences. That's how you get rich. But the problem is the opposite mentality is stay wealthy. Hey, I'm just going to get my 5% returns every year. I'm going to get my 8% returns year in, year out. I'm going to hit singles, every year. I'm going to diversify massively so nothing can take me out sideways. And you're not going to get rich. You're not going to double your money in just a handful of years, but you will just chug along and stay wealthy. And so they take different strategies, of course, what I just said, but realistic, they also take very different mindsets in how you go about executing with your time and energy and your money.
Not to belabor this point, but this is actually fascinating. Like, do you deal with this with clients who it's like, hey, Mazel tov, you got rich. I've got to change you. The first thing you've got to do is you've got to be psychologist for them and say, I'm going to help you change your mindset, because what we've got to focus on now is, like, you've shown that you're amazing at accumulating some richness, right? Like, now we got to change the way you think about this and keep you wealthy.
100%. I mean, a lot of my job is the behavioral, emotional side of money. And it's not just this. I mean, everyone's got emotions when you talk about how you grew up with money, whether it was like a poor household or a rich household or whatever it is. Like, everybody's got situations. And those first 20 years, I think, are so formative to how you go about making decisions with your money. But absolutely, Matt. And there's, you can look up any number of stories that people get rich and then, lose all their money. Right? Look at like professional athletes or whatever. It's like, well, you had a few million, like, couldn't you set aside like $1 million of that? You'd be okay, but it's really hard.
Well, I will reveal to everyone as we close out this section of the show that my strategy for getting rich is, of course, my investment in 5-Minute Finance. My strategy for staying wealthy is to sell my over-concentrated investment in 5-Minute Finance. If you're interested in buying it, you can also email pod@mortonfa.com. All right, let's get to our One Thing segment, which will get Mike Morton canceled on the right. I love these kinds of One Thing segments because I have no idea what the heck you're about to say. I don't know what this is about. You just said diversify your identity. I want to talk about diversify your identity.
Here's what I'm about to tell you, Matt. So just like you don't want to have 100% of your portfolio in a single stock, and that could go badly. That could end badly for you. You don't want your identity to be 100% about one thing, because if that one thing then is taken away from you, it's going to be a real challenge. So imagine you're a musician, you're a famous world-class musician, and that's what you've done for 20, 30 years. And you break a finger and you can no longer play your instrument. That's going to be really challenging to change who you are, because everyone thinks of you as that world-class musician. This comes up all the time in retirement. Okay. I've been working at this, place for 40 years, or I've been this person. If I quit, if I retire, what am I going to say to people? Like, who am I? So the resiliency, and this is backed by science, we'll put some links in the show notes, but even athletes is another one where it comes up all the time, that you want to diversify. You don't want to just be one thing. To be resilient, even as a professional athlete pursuing a single goal, if you want to be more resilient, more robust, you want to diversify the things that you're interested in, the goals that you had, diversify your identity to be more resilient.
All right, for all my mockery, this is actually really striking a chord with me, because for me personally in my life, sports has always been a big part of who I am. Not just what I do, but who I am. If I had free time when I was in my late 20s, 30s, if I had a weekend, I was out, I was in a flag football league. I was playing ultimate. I was playing volleyball. I was golfing. I was doing sports. And as I have aged, my ability to do that has gotten more and more constrained. And I'm going through a little bit. I mean, I was by no means a professional athlete, to be clear, but I'm going through a lot of a similar psychological process of well, if I'm not that, what am I? What do I do? And having a little bit of diversity in the portfolio of my own self-identity, that actually makes a lot of sense to me as I move through. What's your euphemism for this? Move through the life cycles or some
middle-essence. This is middle-essence now, Matt. We're in middle-essence.
Middle-essence. Oh, that's a neologism. I love it. Middle-essence.
We'll do that next time for the one thing.
That makes me sound like a whiny brat. Well, my major goal now, my take home from this One Thing segment in this entire show is I have got to diversify my identity away from being a raging dick. I'm going to continue to work on that toward our next episode of 5-Minute Finance with Mike Morton, and I will see you then.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for joining us on Financial Life Planning. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to and rate the podcast on Apple iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. It makes a massive difference. If you have a comment or question, please email me, mike@mortonfa.com. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. This recording is for informational purposes only and should not be considered for investment advice. Opinions expressed are as of the date of recording. Such opinions are subject to change. I cannot guarantee the accuracy or completeness of the data presented here.